Hey, what's up? This is Ambient Light here. Something I've been more and more interested in recently is the idea of DIY fashion. After all, why buy something off the shelf when you can change something existing to fit what you're after? Often it's cheaper, it's better for the environment in that you're giving something old new life, you get the opportunity to make something that's more unique or personal to your requirements, and I think there's a little bit of satisfaction in making something yourself that is different to everything else. A few months ago, we took a white pair of sneakers and gave them a total makeover in the artisanal style that you might associate with the 11 by BBS Bamba line, saving ourselves hundreds of dollars in the process. And this time we're going to go a level further and attempt to recreate one of the most iconic jackets in modern technical fashion, the Acronym and Nemen collaboration J28-K. Available in an array of different hand-dyed colours, all with a different gradient or ombre effect. The combination of dyeing and ultra-modern pocket-heavy design makes them a super interesting jacket. But being over 5 years old and so iconic means that they are both pretty hard to find these days and rather expensive when they do become available. Of course, that leads us to this video's challenge. Can we recreate some aspect of this look on a far smaller budget? Let's find out. The first thing we're going to need is a jacket, the base product to apply this effect to, and I wanted to find something that would fit the bill at the cheapest possible price, so it was over to eBay I went. I was filtering by men's white jacket, i.e. a blank canvas, for us to put this dye effect on. I have to admit the results were not immediately fruitful, and I did give up several times. However, eventually I did come across a real diamond in the sea of liquid excrement, a early 2000s birdwatching jacket from outdoor brand Merrell. It was at £10 with no bids, and clearly nobody shared my enthusiasm for this jacket because I stuck my bid down, I had no competition, and in a couple of days, the £10 jacket was mine. And a few days later, the jacket itself showed up, and I've got it here. Immediately, you can see, yes, it doesn't quite look as futuristic as the J28-K, but it's got a pretty cool multi-pocket array at the front here, and I think once this has some colour on it, it should change the look of it quite dramatically, and yeah, I'm quite excited about giving this a go. I am definitely seeing the potential here, but next up, we need our dye. Last time, we used RIT Dye More for these shoes, so I thought I would employ exactly the same stuff again. I actually asked RIT this time, and they were kind enough to send over a couple of the specific colours that I asked for, so massive thanks to them. I went on their website, they have an absolutely massive selection of different colours, and it shows you the recipes of the different dyes that you need to combine to get those colours. I was thinking it would be cool to replicate this colourway of the J28-K. It's probably the most wearable colour, it's a little bit more desaturated, a bit more muted, so yeah, very much in contrast to our last project here. And I felt that this colour on the website was fairly close to the sort of thing that I wanted to go for. So with all of our main components purchased, it's time to dye. Welcome to the dyeing zone. I once again am joined by my trusty bucket here. Yes, this is the one that we used for the shoes, which is why it's purple on the inside. And we have, of course, our dye as well. We've got the peacock green and graphite. So to make the deep green forest colour on the website, it's about a 3-to-1 ratio. So we're going to be using 2 bottles of peacock and about 2/3 of a bottle of graphite. First step, we're going to get this filled up with some nice hot water, and then we can add the dye. RIT say ideally to do this on a stove to keep the dye as hot as possible through the dyeing process, but I don't have a pot big enough, and I really don't want to cover the kitchen in dye, so this will have to do. Similarly to the shoes, we're going to have the jacket in dye for a couple of hours total, but to get this gradient or ombre effect, we're going to regularly pull the jacket more and more out of the dye mixture. So only one corner will be dunked for the full period of time, whereas the other bits will be dunked for less and less time respectively. Hopefully that means one side will be the original colour or very close to it, and the other corner will be a nice deep dark green. The main thing I want to avoid here is creating stripes rather than a nice smooth gradient. So to help manage that, I'm trying to move the jacket quite frequently and pulling it out of the dye in a non-uniform way, maybe giving it an extra dunk here and there, etc, etc. We'll go through that process, removing more and more of the jacket, and after enough time has elapsed, that bottom corner should hopefully be nice and saturated and nice deep colour. So we'll pull everything out, we'll give it a nice rinse to remove any excess dye, and then we can really see exactly what we're looking at. And that is the dyeing process complete. So I've just been rinsing this off, So it's still soaking wet obviously, but you can get some idea of what the colour is going to end up looking like. It looks like it's got a fairly nice dark colour, so it has actually taken the dye quite well, which is good. Although it's gone quite a cold sort of green, which is a little bit different to what I anticipated. It also seems like we do have a little bit of gradient here, but it's more actually that it's got this kind of textural element to it. So you can see some kind of different colours and a bit of a pattern emerging here, so that's going to be quite interesting. So we'll hang this up, we'll get it dried off so we can see properly what it looks like, and then we'll get back to the studio. Welcome back. I've hung the jacket to dry overnight and we have it right here, so of course it's time to take a proper look at this thing. There's a bunch of different areas I'd like to give some close-up attention to, and we'll also take a look at how it appears on body and how it looks in the context of an Acronym outfit, and ultimately find out if this passes the test. Does our upgraded Merrell jacket feel appropriate as a technical fashion item? And we'll also talk a bit about how we could take this further or upgrade this even more. I'll get to that later though. First up, the green colour is a lot nicer now the jacket is dry. It's definitely not as rich as our inspiration though, which is a shame. I would have liked to have seen more green on there. Even though we used more dye than the shoes, perhaps it just doesn't adhere to this face fabric quite as well. The colour it did absorb though happened pretty quickly. The gradient effect wasn't really as strong as I would have liked. For example, we have kind of this section here up at the top pocket. This was only in the dye for about 15 minutes, whereas down here at the bottom was in for over an hour, and the colour difference is really not that great. The real tonal difference is over the left shoulder, which only really touched the dye very briefly by accident. So if I were to do this again, I would probably keep almost half of the jacket totally out of the dye, or just dunk it very, very quickly, and then that would give a closer look to the J28-K that we modelled this after. It's very hard to predict how quickly dye will adhere to different types of nylon, so that's definitely worth bearing in mind when you're doing this kind of project. The dye is also quite uneven. You can see multiple areas across this jacket, over the arms and on the main body where this is the case. This is because we used a bucket for this, so the jacket was a bit screwed up in there. Different parts would have been touching and less dye can reach creased areas. I quite like this effect personally because it makes the jacket look more obviously hand finished and a bit more complex in terms of the colour. This finish is not uncommon of course, but a notable recent example is the Arc'teryx System A collection had a couple of jackets in the last release that did have this kind of effect. If you wanted a more even colour, you could use a bigger container, try and lay this out flat, or even just try and make sure that you're mixing it around a lot and agitating it so that parts don't kind of settle in one place, but I quite like how this has come out. The best example of that though is the hood here. I kept this zipped into the collar because I actually wanted a sort of contrast hood. The dye of course did get into this area anyway, but what's happened is you've got a different level of saturation, so this is a kind of light green compared to everywhere else, and you've got this real three-dimensional effect that's emerged here as well as a result of it being fully scrunched up inside the collar. It's almost like a tie-dye effect on the hood here, which I think looks really cool, and interestingly on the inside of the hood, this is a great example of how different materials can take dye to different levels because it's gone way darker than anywhere else on the jacket. Multi-material clothing can be great when object dyed like this, and in fact we noticed that with the Asics, where some parts of the upper would go a really deep purple colour and some parts were a lot lighter. But now time for that all-important test in the side-by-side. How does this compare to the J28-K? How viable is our DIY alternative that's literally thousands of dollars cheaper? Honestly, I think as soon as this was in the context of a technical outfit and worn alongside other Acronym gear, it fits in surprisingly nicely. Despite this Merrell jacket being far older and designed purely with outdoor activities in mind, rather than taking outfit pics for the gram, the recolor does make it look a lot more appropriate. The two-color shoulder isn't as visible as I'd like, that's a big difference from our inspiration, but we've noted some ways we can improve that if we did this again, and it does still have some visibility. You can definitely still see it, which of course is really nice. It definitely gives a hint of this not being a standard off-the-shelf product, and of course the hood goes a long way towards that as well, with its totally different color and this multi-tonal effect. So I do feel like this can fit into an outfit in a similar way to the J28-K would. In that sense, this has been kind of a success, especially when we take into account the fact that this is orders of magnitude cheaper than a jacket like that would be. This was just over $10 equivalent for the jacket itself. We used about $30 of materials as well. Even comparing to more readily available Nemen jackets, which I definitely recommend checking out if you like this kind of finish, we're still saving a pretty substantial amount of money here. And it's all part of the fun, not knowing quite what you're going to get. It's hard to treat this like an exact science when there are a lot of unknown variables. It is difficult to know in advance how each material is going to react to dye. I did mention next steps here. What else could we do to this jacket to make it a bit more interesting or more fashion forward? Well, the obvious answer is you could dye this again. We could use a deeper green color and literally dye the bottom half, for example, and that would give a closer gradient effect to what we were perhaps originally going for. But I also had a thought while wearing this, thinking that a cropped version of this jacket could actually look really cool. So a more drastic thing you could consider doing with this is literally chopping off the bottom section from just above this bottom pocket here and totally redoing it, and that would change the design of the jacket into something a lot more fashion forward, more directional, and potentially pretty interesting as well. That sounds quite daunting. It's not the hardest thing in the world though. It's just a case of removing the main zip, chopping it off, making sure that it's straight of course, re-stitching it, and then you can put a new zip track on there instead. I don't know, but I think I could do that, so let me know if you think that would look cool. Some people have added DIY jacket slings to stuff as well, and that would certainly bring this more in line with your average Acronym jacket, so that's an option you could consider as well. Back to the dye though, I would definitely encourage you to give this a go. It really was mega easy, and we turned something that was almost worthless into, in my opinion, a fairly cool and interesting item that is literally unique. And there's a lot of value in being able to do that. So I don't want to hear anyone saying, oh, I could never have a cool technical jacket, because this is way more interesting than anything you could find on AliExpress. One word of warning though, I would not recommend doing this with Gore-Tex or another laminated fabric. Putting that in very, very hot water is probably going to cause the material to delaminate, those layers will separate. That will totally ruin it from a water resistance perspective, and it won't look very good either. It worked fine with this jacket though, and it didn't seem to shrink it either, so this was a size medium, still fits me fine. It was awesome to see people dyeing their sneakers after that last video, so I would love to see if anyone decides to give this a go. Please do show me some before and after pictures, that would be amazing. And let me know in the comments what you thought of this jacket. Is this something you'd consider doing for yourself? If you like this video, you want to see more of this kind of content, we're doing something a bit more experimental, some DIY stuff, definitely let me know. That is mega helpful. But that's everything I have to say for this week on this cool, not quite Acronym J28K. And as always, we'll see you very soon for the next video.